From Wada Brands, welcome to Enhance Your Life. I'm your host, Jonathan Small, and each week I talk to people from all sorts of professions and backgrounds about how cannabis has enhanced their lives and how this healing plant can enrich your life too. Hey everybody, welcome to the Enhance Your Life podcast. My name is Jonathan Small and I am the host, and I'm really excited about our guest today. Dr. Swathi Varanasi joins us. She goes by the name Dr. Swathi for short, and she is a PharmD, and she is the co-founder and scientific officer of Element Apothec, a disruptive, clean, and cruelty-free CBD botanical beauty and wellness brand, for which she has written the first ever online course for consumers on CBD and cannabis as medicine. And this will soon be up in the summer of 2021. Is it up? Is it up yet?
It will be very soon.
Very, very soon. So stay tuned. She's also a plant-based wellness expert and educational advisor for Aptogen and health food brands, a clinical researcher published in peer-reviewed journals, a university lecturer, and a board of director for LA Normal. Man, you are busy, Dr. Swathi. I wanted to bring Dr. Swathi on the show today to talk about a bunch of things, but for one, the endocannabinoid system, because we hear that term bandied about, but I don't think a lot of people really understand, what it is, how it works, and how is it connected to the cannabinoids that we consume and that we find in CBD and THC. So, Dr. Swathi, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
So first, a little background, little origin story. How did you get into the line of work that you're in?
For me, it was a combination of things. I was someone who always knew that I wanted to be in the holistic space. I wanted to be in the preventative medicine space. And so, of course, going to pharmacy school, I was looking for opportunities to do that because pharmacy school is very much focused on the prescription side of therapy and not as much on the preventative side. So one of my goals as a practitioner is to bridge those two sides because I really see the value in a lot of the botanical options like medical cannabis, as well as all the other prescriptions that some people need. It really just depends on each patient. And so for me, cannabis I see as an incredible modality for health and healing. I think it can optimize our health and wellness, which I'm all about that. But I think also it can be so useful for so many people that are suffering with things like anxiety or sleep issues, or really like the list is like almost like a laundry list because there's so many depending on what strain you're using and what terpenes are in it and everything. It really depends on what that is, but I think that cannabis really can have such an incredible value. So I come from the scientific perspective where I think there's so much that can be done with cannabis and there's so much education that's needed so people can learn more about the potential of its use. So I'm very interested from that perspective. And also when I started in the integrative space, there was just so much demand. People wanted to know about it. People kept asking questions. And by people, I mean everyone from practitioners to patients caregivers, like everyone was interested. Oh, and then plus on top of that, like friends and family too, like everyone is interested for their own reasons. And so I think it's really been a combination of my like nerdy interest in science plus the demand that really seems to be out there for this information.
Do you use cannabis yourself? Is that something that you, if you don't mind sharing, is it a medicine that you have used in the past or use currently?
I really think that it's amazing for optimizing health and wellness. So as I just mentioned, I guess. CBD, CBG, CBN, I think are incredible. And I use those you mentioned that I'm the chief scientific officer for Element Apothec, the botanical wellness brand. And so I use the sleep tincture that has CBD and CBN almost every night. So
that can be very, very helpful.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's incredible.
Tell me how it works though, because forgive me, but I have a sort of traditional view of like a pharmacist, right?
Yeah.
Sort of being in the lab coat behind the CVS, window. So are you able to prescribe medications, or does that have to come from a doctor and you work with the doctor? Like, how does that all work? How do people work with you?
Yeah, so it really depends. I think, especially in the integrative space, it's a bit more like, I don't want to say the wild, wild west, but it's a bit more just like new and innovative. And so when it comes to medications and everything like that, a lot of pharmacists that are interested in this space are working kind of alongside other practitioners and other providers like physicians that are able to prescribe. But a lot of the people that I've worked with, of course, and cannabis, you're not writing prescriptions, not in California. And so a lot of the people that I've worked with, I give suggestions. And a lot of those suggestions have to do with, because I am in integrative health, they have to do with nutrition, they have to do with, like optimizing sleep, as well as what sort of cannabis strains or products or anything that I think that could be beneficial to a patient. But it really comes down to what they want to do for themselves.
Right. All right. Let's get into the endocannabinoid system. It affects this conversation. It's so interesting because, just the other day I was having a July 4th barbecue with a traditional doctor, and I said, I started talking about the endocannabinoid system, and he was like, what is that? Like, he had no idea what it was, right? And this is a guy who went through 10 years of medical school. And yet we talk about it a lot in the cannabis world. It comes up a lot and people get very excited about it. So I think first, let's explain to our audience, what is the endocannabinoid system?
Yeah, so the endocannabinoid system is a complex system in the body. Everyone has one. And so this system itself has receptors that are located all throughout the body. And so the receptors that we know the most about are the CB1 and CB2 receptors. So that is the shortened version of cannabinoid type receptor 1 and 2. And so the CB1 receptor is more closely associated with the central nervous system. And so that's found in the spinal cord as well as the brain, but it's also found in a lot of other tissues and a lot of other places in the body and different organ systems. And then the CB2 receptor is actually more closely associated with immune function. That's found in a variety of different places as well. And so I think the reason that physician did not know about it is because it's still not a part of the core curriculum of any healthcare professional school yet in the United States. Slowly but surely that is changing, but that I've had very similar conversations with a lot of my colleagues in the pharmacist world, physician world, and a lot of them are also unfamiliar with it. So the endocannabinoid system, yes, has those two receptors that are found throughout the body. And its overall goal, because it's involved in so many different organ systems and tissues, it really does have involvement in a lot of the different functional processes of our body. That's everything from, the physiological things, like things actually physically happening, but also that really affects our brain too. So also psychologically too. So it really does impact a lot of things. And the goal of the endocannabinoid system is to help the body maintain and achieve a certain level and baseline of homeostasis. And so that's a fancy word that just means balance. So the goal of it really is to help balance everything out and really just improve and enhance the functioning of other things going on in the body. So I've heard it described almost as like an umbrella, a lot of the other systems under that umbrella, just because it does have an impact, or rather it can have an impact on so many other systems.
Do we have thousands of systems in our body that are working like the endocannabinoid system?
We don't have systems that work like the endocannabinoid system, in that a lot of the systems are a bit more like, for example, like the heart, it's called the cardiovascular system. That one really is centralized in the heart. And so that one, as well as a lot of the other systems in the body too, they're not as widespread. They're a bit more centralized or concentrated in one part of the body.
So basically, the endocannabinoid system needs a better publicist, because
Absolutely.
we've heard of the heart, we've heard of these other systems, but that one, unless you're sort of in cannabis, it's you might not be as familiar with it, and even people who have studied for years don't know about it. So you talk about the receptors. What are endocannabinoids?
Like what are those and how are those in our body?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's like one of the myths that I love to bust is that a lot of people are, quote unquote, scared of incorporating CBD or THC or really any other cannabinoid into their life. So that's like one of the places that I start with the conversation is we actually have endocannabinoids. And so endo meaning like within, that's what the prefix means. And so really those are the endocannabinoids that are created in the body. They're created on demand and they're synthesized completely in the body without any sort of external force or anything. So these endocannabinoids, they're called that because they interact with the endocannabinoid system. And so there's two that we know the most about. One of them is called anandamide, and the other one is called 2-AG for short. It's a super long scientific name, but 2-AG is what everyone calls it. Both of those act in the body to really help that functionality that I was talking about to really optimize and get to that level of homeostasis or balance for the body. Also, like we're still learning so much about them, but both of them have been looked at to have relationships with the CB1 and CB2 receptor. In particular, the CB1 receptor has a pretty strong relationship with the endocannabinoid anandamide that I mentioned first. And one of my favorite things about anandamide, or another, like, I guess, myth I love to bust about anandamide and about the endocannabinoids is that runner's high that everyone talks about, like being related to endorphins, that goes back to the endorphin hypothesis and a lot of other, things that were looked at that time, but that really seemed to like take hold in the media. And then now everyone's like thinking that running is like completely and 100% directly related to endorphin levels. And not to say that that's false, but really, if you look at the science behind it, one of the first things when you are running and you feel that sense of euphoria, that runner's high, that actually comes from anandamide interacting with the CB1 receptor. And that high, otherwise, people associate that with THC, and THC also has a very strong relationship with the CB1 receptor. And so that's actually why, people call it the runner's high. And down, if you're looking in all, the pathways and everything in the body, eventually, yes, your endorphins do increase. So it's not like it's false, but I just think it's so important to know that, endocannabinoids play a role in so many different things. And one of them is like the runner's high, or when you work out really hard and you feel so good after, like that's how you can see your endocannabinoids just like really benefiting your life.
I mean, it is called the runner's high, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, whoever came up with that term obviously knew what they were talking about.
Absolutely.
If I'm understanding, we have these endocannabinoids already in our system. Like we have CBD and THC naturally in our body?
No, we don't.
No. Okay. Okay. Let's not, I want to clarify that.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So the difference between the CBD and THC and the other cannabinoids, those are found in the plant.
Right.
And so they're also referred to as phytocannabinoids. So phyto, that prefix meaning like from a plant.
Yep.
And so as we know, there's CBD and THC. Those are the major cannabinoids. And those are the ones that, we know the most about, that have the most research right now. I think a more simplistic way of looking at it, if we wanted to like almost put the endocannabinoids and the phytocannabinoids next to one another. THC, as I mentioned, has a strong relationship with CB1, and as does anandamide. And then CBD, we're not sure exactly how it functions with the endocannabinoid system, which is so fascinating. We know that it modulates the endocannabinoid system, which really is a fancy word for meaning that we know that it has some sort of overall impact, but we don't know exactly which receptor and to what affinity and all that business. We don't know that yet. So all of that's still very much being researched. And then 2-AG is a bit more similar to that, more research needed, but maybe has a stronger relationship with the CB2 receptor.
So these phytocannabinoids interact from the plant, interact with the endocannabinoids within your system in a potentially beneficial way.
Yeah, exactly. So they can interact with one another, but also they have their own effects by themselves too. So when you are, like, let's say ingesting THC or you're smoking THC, that will go and have its own direct effects on the endocannabinoid system. And so they all kind of work in synergy in that way.
Yeah, let's take an example. So, Wana makes an edible. You have an edible, a THC, like a 5% THC edible. How is that then working within the endocannabinoid system? What's happening?
Yeah, definitely. So as I mentioned, when it comes to like ingesting versus inhaling and all of those, oh my gosh, that could be a whole nother
Podcast.
series of
I know,
episodes.
it's different.
No, but when it comes down to it, yes. So THC will interact with the endocannabinoid system, and it will have that really strong relationship with the CB1 receptor, and that's what really helps elicit those feelings of euphoria and feeling high, and that feeling, that overall sense of like calmness and like that ease. So that comes from the CB1 receptor, and then of course, if that edible has other cannabinoids, and those will also work with the endocannabinoid system too.
So you also mentioned before we talked about something called you say
Cannabimimetics.
Yes. Thank you so much for saying it, because it looks like an eye chart when I look at the word. What is that? What are some examples of that?
Yeah, so cannabimimetics are different things like that are generally naturally occurring. So plants and any like herbs and fruits and like so many different things that we can incorporate into our lives that also have a really beneficial effect on the endocannabinoid system. And so as I talked about the runner's high, so exercise has been a proven cannabimimetic, meaning that whatever we're doing when we're exercising impacts the endocannabinoid system. And then, of course, anandamide binds to CB1, as well as a lot of other processes too. And with that, our endocannabinoid system functions better and has an effect in the body. So it's really other things that are not like quote unquote considered normal cannabinoids. So not the endocannabinoids, not the phytocannabinoids, but other things that can elicit those responses in the endocannabinoid system.
Okay, so let's say somebody like me or somebody's listening to this and they're like, this is so fascinating. I just want to maximize, what my body has given me, naturally with plant, medicine. A lot of us kind of go blindly into like a dispensary or go online to order our cannabis and don't really know the best way to integrate it all. And that's kind of what your field is. So what do you recommend that people do?
In my opinion, I think that when it comes to utilizing cannabis and especially, well, I mean, really for anything, I think that it's really important because when someone's looking to integrate this into their life, there are so many factors when it comes to the endocannabinoid system. And of course, as we know, like dosing is not related to age or weight or anything. It's really very patient specific. So I'm a huge advocate of people having some sort of healthcare practitioner. I almost like joke like in their back pocket, but like someone who they can turn to talk to and ask questions to before starting any sort of therapy. I think it's really important because, for example, there could be drug interactions that are possible. There could be like lifestyle interactions. Like maybe they think that, like, for example, something I've heard quite often is, oh, like I hear the benefits of cannabis, but I don't want to smoke. And so like even being a healthcare practitioner, being there to educate the patient and tell them there actually are so many other ways that you can, involve cannabis into your life. You can ingest them. You can put them on your skin, like topically, like a lotion. Like there's so many options. So I think that is another really big part of the education as being a healthcare practitioner, before people are like jumping, head first, feet first, full body first into something new that they don't know a lot about, just knowing that they have someone to turn to for that.
Such great advice. Cannabis is such, and like most medicines, such a personal experience. And what might be true for one person can be completely different for you. And so I think to have somebody who can kind of guide you through that is a wonderful thing. If people want to find out more about you, about Element Apothec, what should they do?
Yeah. So if they want to find out more about me, my website is drswappy.com. So DOCTORSWATHI.com. So of course, like you can find me on there. It's the same handle on Instagram. So DOCTORSWATHI, Dr. Swappy. And then to find out more about Element Apothec, it's Element Apothec, that same name.com, as well as the same name on Instagram. So you'll put it in the show notes, I'm hoping, so that people will just be able to like click on it. Yeah,
you can just click on it. It'll be in the show notes, but I wanted to say it just in case people were taking notes at home like I am. So Dr. Swathi, thank you so much for your time. It's been really, really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so much more to say too with cannabimimetics. Like I could go on and on because of course we talked about running, but there's also like other things that we can incorporate into our life that also can optimize the endocannabinoid system, like different herbs, like echinacea that people take during cold flu season for preventative measure. There's also like probiotics have some really cool research, or omega-3 fatty acids. They're just like so many things. Oh, also like matcha and green tea. Like there's just so many things we could talk about. So that can be another episode. But yeah, thank you so much for having me.
For sure. I just want to have an entire episode where we get to drink matcha tea and talk about matcha tea.
Wait, can we do that?
Let's do that at the matcha.
I would love to do that. Yeah, let's do that next.
That's the best. All right, Dr. Swathi, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much.
Enhance Your Life is brought to you by Wana, the #1 infused product in North America. Wana's entire process is designed to deliver the same great experience time after time. They have spent years fine-tuning their recipes so that their products are delicious, consistent, and potent. For more information, head on over to wanabrands.com. That's Wana, W-A-N-A, brands.com.